Welcome to the Connecting with Care podcast. I'm Lillie Walker. How do social workers support students, families, and educators in the ever-changing world of education? Today, we look at the heart of school-based practice and the impact social workers have within learning communities. Join us as we talk with Haley Gaskill about social work in schools. Hello.
Hey, Lillie.
Hi, I am with Miss Haley Gaskill.
Hello. Hi, guys.
Hi. Today, our topic is going to be on school-based social work.
Yay! Woohoo!
All right. So I'd love to get started by just hearing a little bit from you. So tell me about yourself, where you're from, and your program and how you got here.
Yeah, for sure. So, hi guys, I'm Haley, as Lillie had said, and I am originally from Allen, Texas, which is just north of Dallas, and I am currently in my second year of the MSW generalist program here at Baylor, and so I actually got my undergrad degree in public health at the University of Arkansas, and then took a year off, did a program called the Kanakuk Institute, which is like a mini seminary. It's not really seminary, but it's like a mini Bible program. For a year, and then I ended up here. And so I've done a year of this MSW program since I didn't get my undergrad in social work, and now I'm in the second year, the advanced year right now. So it's been a journey.
And Haley and I have walked through this program together, and she's been such a sweet friend to have.
That's been awesome
on this journey. All right, so a little bit more fun little questions to get to know you.
Yeah.
If you had to use one word to describe where you're living, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm trying to think. Probably new. That's kind of vague. Yeah. But yeah, I would say new. I live in like a new build area in Waco, which I feel like is kind of rare. And there's like a lot of college students, but it's not super close to campus. But yeah, so I would say new. It's a new build.
Yeah,
new area, which is fun.
We love a new house.
We do.
All right. If you had to say your go-to drink order at your favorite local coffee shop or tea house, what would you say it is?
I would say definitely Pinewood. It would be the local coffee shop for sure. Best coffee in town, in my opinion. And I would say recently it's been a decaf Americano. I've been trying to stay away from caffeine recently. And so,
wow. Good for you.
Yeah, it's been hard. I get very jittery with caffeine. And so I was like, I need to find something else. But so I've been doing a decaf Americano, iced Americano. Let's make that clear.
All right. And finally, what is your I can't stop wearing this accessory right now?
I'm actually not wearing them today. I almost did, but I just recently got some New Balance shoes. I don't remember which one. They're like the 580s, 590s. I know they have all those numbers. Yeah, they have all those numbers for New Balance. But those have been my go-to. They're really fun. I feel really cool when I wear them, so I wear them a lot.
I love that. All righty. Well, thanks for sharing that. We'd love to get to know you and just have a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
But now we'll get a little bit more personal. And so I would love to hear what brought you to Baylor and social work specifically.
Yeah, that's a great question. That has also been a journey for sure. I would say I've always known that I wanted to do something in the mental health field. So I struggled with depression myself in high school, and that really led to me wanting to do something, whether that was counseling. I had thought about being a nurse practitioner for a while in psychiatry. And that's kind of how I ended up with the public health degree. Was I actually started out nursing, ultimately ended up in public health, and then was like, okay, I want to go become a counselor in some way, shape, or form, and still want to work in the mental health field, which led me to applying to all kinds of different grad schools. I knew that I had to go to grad school to do that. And there's all kinds of options, right? There's the Master of Counseling. There's, the social work degree. You can be a school counselor. You can do all kinds of things. Educational psychology. You can go get your doctoral degree in psych, totally. There's so many options. And so ultimately what I ended up doing was I just applied to a bunch of different grad schools, a couple Masters of Counseling programs, and then a couple social work programs. But I personally was really interested in the integration of faith and practice. And that's kind of what led me to Baylor. And so, I applied here and got in and out a couple other places. But those were also longer programs. So that was part of it. It was kind of like looking at the time, and then also the fact that we have the 10th competency here at Baylor that integrates spirituality and practice was really, really intriguing to me. And so that's what kind of made me end up here specifically at Baylor getting my social work degree, was really, I think, that uniqueness of that 10th competency.
Wow, that's really awesome.
Yeah.
And I do not want to underscore the applying to a bunch of grad school programs, because that is one of the hardest things ever.
It is so hard. And it's so much more complicated than undergrad because you just cannot, it's so much easier to find information on undergraduate programs than it is on graduate programs. And so it takes a lot of work.
Oh, let me write this essay. Oh, let me write this other essay for this other school. And then also pay the application fees.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
But it's a lot. I will say I'm very thankful that you ended up at social work program.
Thanks, Lillie. Me too.
Alrighty. How would you say that you have grown personally and professionally during your time at the Garland School?
Yeah. Man, personally, a lot of growth has happened. This has been a very stretching last year and a half for sure. So I would say personally, I've grown a lot just in like open-mindedness. That's been a really, really big one. And as well, personally, just like have grown a lot, even in my personal faith, I think, and just like my beliefs and being open to other people's beliefs has been huge, becoming more accepting of other people's beliefs. And so a lot of open-mindedness and a lot of stretching has happened in that way. I think personally, I've just learned to find a lot of joy in getting to know people's stories, no matter what their background is. And so I think that's been really cool. And then professionally, that was the other one, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Professionally, oh man, also have grown a lot. I did not know what social work really totally was coming into this program. I knew that I wanted to get a clinical license one day, but didn't know what all you could do with social work. And so professionally, I've just grown in a lot of flexibility, I think, is a big one, because in a profession like social work, you have to be on your toes and you have to be flexible, has been really big. And then also, I think like in leadership too, of being able to kind of speak out, and that advocacy piece of social work of being able to speak out when things really matter and speak out for what's right, and to advocate for clients. And so I think those are a couple of things that I've grown in professionally.
Absolutely. Wow. That was a really good answer. Thanks. Alrighty. And then how would you say your time here has shaped the way you see yourself and your career as a future social worker?
Yeah. I think it has really narrowed down kind of what I want to do in the future. I think it is, in a weird way, it's like given me more options, because I came into social work and was like, I want to do counseling. Like, that's it. I want to do private practice counseling, whether that's in a school, whether that's, private practice. Like, I want to be one-on-one at that micro level of care.
Sure.
And I think being here, I have learned a lot more of what I could do with this degree, which is really cool, and has really broadened my horizons on what I'd be open to in the future. Like even before this year, I was like, I don't really know if I want to be a school-based social worker, but being in the internship that I am now in a school, like, has really opened up so many opportunities of like how much I love working with kids, and how a school is a great opportunity to get to do that. And getting to see like so many other areas of a kid's life. Like, it's not just, seeing them individually, but also getting to see their community. I really love. And so, I think that, really broadening opportunities and my interests in a lot of ways has kind of shaped who I am, and how I'd be willing to kind of jumping around careers and not necessarily sticking with like one career in social work for the rest of my life. I'd be willing to move around and do school, private practice, hospital, whatever that would be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think our education here really prepares us in so many different aspects of social work. We are not like confined to one area because that's what we choose as a grad student. We're educated on so many different realms. And so we have the ability to do that, which I think is so awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree.
All right. Well, that kind of leads us in to talk about more of the school-based stuff, because we want to give our listeners some really good information on that.
Yes, for sure.
So if you wouldn't mind describing your practicum site and what your role is there and just kind of how that looks.
Yeah. So right now I'm actually with a federal grant called the Bear Project. And that is through the Department of Education. And so it puts social workers in schools in Waco ISD to work on social emotional well-being and social emotional skills as well. So really working with kids on, we use a lot of like play therapy techniques a lot of times to really get kids to learn how to, instead of fighting, we can do box breathing. We can take a few deep breaths, mindfulness, things like that. Or also a lot of kids come from just really hard homes. So kind of coming up with like, okay, what does that attachment look like? Like leaning into attachment theory, and kind of giving them that safe space to have in our office. So that way they can have someone they can come to, because a lot of them don't have that at home, and don't have that in their friendships. And so we're working a lot on those social and emotional skills. So that way kids can thrive. We like to say not only in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom, because those are so important. I mean, if a kid isn't able to emotionally regulate, then they can't focus in class. And so our goal is to help them get there. So that way they can focus in class and then get the good grades that they need, rather than focusing first on the academics and then the other way around. How can we make the kid feel safe and seen so that way they can thrive in their environment, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I was in a school last year. Yeah. We were in the same school, actually, which is so interesting. But I will say that you come in contact with a lot of students that don't have those basic needs met. Yeah. And so how can we expect them to function on such a high level of like learning and engaging with and teachers and students and functioning on that really high level when they don't have those basic needs met. Yeah. And so I think you're doing such amazing work of being in there and being there to meet their basic needs, help them feel seen and known and cared for. So
yeah, for
really
sure.
important work.
Definitely.
How would you say classroom learning has connected to what you're doing in practice?
Yeah, I would say this year it's probably connected more than it did last year for sure. And just like so many ways being in the school. Like I had mentioned before, theories, with like attachment theory, with family systems theory, just like looking at the whole kid as who they are, and taking all of that into account, person and environment. So I feel like theories a lot have really influenced the way that I work with kids, which is really interesting. And then also even just learning I think even last year we learned a little bit about TBRI, trust-based relational intervention. And so getting to actually use those principles of okay, let's get a kid a snack before, we tell them to calm down. If they're in a crisis, let's get them a snack and a water, help them regulate their bodies. So that way they can actually think clearly. So that's been a big one. And as well, I think in terms of we're in a diagnosis class right now. And of course we are not eligible to diagnose right now as students. But even being able to read the DSM-5 TR and look at a student in front of me and be like, okay, this kid already has a diagnosis of ADHD or, is showing signs and symptoms of ADHD. And we're actually able to make that connection, now we do have regulations, right? So I can't just go to the kid and be like, I think you have ADHD. But I can refer them to the right resources, and even for my own learning of connecting the dots there of, I can see how we got to this diagnosis and how this impacts this kid in real life, especially with those neurodevelopmental disorders, I think for sure, such as ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, all of those. And so that's been really interesting to see face to face, I think, especially in a school setting, because it impacts those kids so much, in the school. And so, I think there's been a lot of things, theory, and then also with diagnosis, and really getting to apply true assessment strategies as well has been really cool, to actually get to use a biopsychosocial spiritual assessment, and sit down with a kid and how do I get creative with this for their developmental stage, we learned about developmental stages of, let's play Uno while we do it or Connect 4 while we do it. So that way the kid is really engaged in the assessment process and the intervention process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of just for our listeners, our first year is really kind of those basic principles of how do I approach walking into a room with someone that's vulnerable, and how do I build rapport with them, and how do I use their showman skills? Yes. But how do I use those effectively. And then kind of in our second year, we're actually looking at the DSM-5 and we're looking at these diagnoses and all these criteria, but we do have to hone in on those skills of like, I need to build rapport with my client first, especially students that are sometimes not super trusting of people they encounter. So how can we build those skills? And then now we're getting the education of like, okay, what are kind of red flags? How can I have some clinical insight into what may be going on for this student so that I can care for them?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think that's been really cool too, of even like seeing what Schulman skills I've used, you know, and like how even, I mean, that is integrated in every day of just like, you know, tell me more about that, like reaching in the silences if there's a kid that's quiet, you know, or questioning if you need more information on something like it's really been cool how it all has come together in the school setting.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Okay. My next question is, what is one thing you wish people understood about the field of social work as it relates to education? Yeah, this one I've thought about a lot. I think it's really interesting to walk into the school setting. There's so many different types of professionals that work on mental health services, especially in a place like Waco ISD. And so it can get really murky on what our role is within the school system. And I think my biggest thing is I would love for people to know that even in the school, social work is more than, you know, CPS and referrals and connecting you to resources, that we can actually be the ones on the ground doing that work one-on-one with a student. I think is really interesting to point out. Not that, I mean, those things are all great that social work does, right? Like social workers are in CPS, social workers are in community resources. But I think sometimes we've even had situations, right, where if a parent hears social worker in the school, they're scared, you know, they're less inclined to share with us or to have their student work with us because they automatically think, oh, CPS, like what if somehow they're after me and want to get me reported? Right. Yeah. They think I'm a bad parent, you know, they're not on my side. And so I think the biggest thing that I would love for people to know is, that school-based social workers, you know, do more than just that. And in a school, actually, our role is not CPS. Our role is not the disciplinarian. You know, our role is to support the kids with their social and emotional well-being. Very similar to a school counselor, except a school counselor does scheduling, right? And has the school district, of course, that they have to listen to or follow the guidelines of. And as a Bear intern, I follow the guidelines of the school district, yes, but I also have a little bit more freedom of getting to work with the kids on a different level, which is really neat. And with a smaller caseload as well, because school counselors have so much on their plate. And so I think that's a really neat thing, that we're more than just when we're in the school, we're really working with those students one-on-one. And we are more of that social emotional support. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Next question is, how do you see the education system impacting your work as a social worker? That is a great question. A lot. And this year I've seen it more than anything. It's really like, I grew up in public school and I don't think I ever understood the impact of education system and policy on public schools and, a child's education until I was a social worker in a school, even going to public school myself in Texas. And we're even seeing right now, there's Senate Bill 12, right? There's all these things happening in Texas that are highly impacting us. I was just on a phone with a parent this morning trying to get a consent form because consent forms can be really difficult to get, and so the balance, I think, in the education system of trying to protect the family's rights and the parents' rights, but also protecting the well-being of the child is a really hard balance that I've seen happen, and how that impacts social work in the schools. We want to protect parents and we want to be able to protect their rights of what their kid can and cannot do in the school, right? And is what they're learning in the school. But also seeing how it's impacting me, having a hard time getting consent forms when I know that the student, is in high need of support services. And these parents just don't have the time or the money or the resources, to get us a consent form the day of or the next day. And kids are forgetful too, right? Kids forget signed consent forms all the time. And so I think, I think the education system, it's really interesting how I'm seeing just the way that policy
around education really impacts social workers in the schools. And also it's been interesting to see kind of how just different, like it so is district by district as well, of like who has social workers, right? And like what kind, how I mentioned earlier, there are so many different mental health professionals in the school system. And so kind of even seeing who decides to have social workers, who decides to have school psychologists, who decides to have other professionals. And so, yeah, I don't know if that totally answers your question, but that just made me think about that, how policy around education really impacts the social profession.
Yeah, and it's like the policy is making these rules, and then it's kind of disseminated down into the school district. Yeah. And they have to follow those rules, but then you as a social worker are like, okay, how do I balance this and what's best for my client, the student, versus how they're operating within the system. Can be like a really tough balance.
For sure.
And even like the new, I guess, law that was passed about no phones in schools.
Yeah, that's a big one as well.
And obviously that creates a whole another level of responsibility on the school system. And then you're also dealing with this kid that needs to talk to their mom for some particular reason. And so like just finding that balance, and then you're really kind of seeing the impacts of it because you're working with the student.
Oh, for sure. Oh yeah. That's been very interesting to even see, like, you know, how, just how like it changes year by year, you know, it's so up in the air all the time. And because I know like last year Baylor interns were able to get verbal consent, and like this year, you know, we had to get written consent, and it's been a lot of, I think you're right in terms of like it puts a lot more on the school system, because I've seen how it puts a lot more on me and my colleague of like, you know, us constantly in contact with parents to get consent, you know, or having to get really creative in order to get these kids the support they need. And so, yeah.
And like, I don't want to like get too much in the weeds of it.
Yeah.
But for our listeners, like we're going into classes and learning about how policies historically have impacted the populations that we serve.
Yeah.
And then we see it firsthand because you can see on the news new bills that are passed, and then we see how it trickles down into the populations that we serve. And so I think learning about that history is so important, and then being well informed.
Yeah, for sure.
In today's society, to kind of see how that may impact our jobs and the funding for our jobs and ultimately our populations that we want to care for.
Yeah, for sure.
Alrighty. Well, just to close it up, I'd like to ask just a few more questions. So if you had to give one piece of advice to someone who's considering Baylor, the Garland School, and the fields of social work, what would your advice be?
Oh, that's a toughie, Lillie. Man, there's so much advice, probably. One piece of advice would probably be to come in open-minded, I think. And I think that goes for any program that you enter into. But yeah, I think just like come in open-minded and be willing to learn and be willing to be a sponge, because we learn a lot here at the School of Social Work. And there's such a unique set of things that we get to learn here at the School of Social Work. And so I think just coming in ready and coming in to be a sponge, because I think a lot of times, especially in a master's program, like, you know, I've seen too, it's like, okay, well, it's just more school, you know, and I just want to get through it and I just want to be done. And I'm tired of school, you know, I want to graduate, and I get it because I've felt that. But I think too, especially being a programmer, like some people come in with their social work degree, you know, just like learning that the master's level is a whole new level, and really being able to come in and be like, no, I'm here to learn, you know, and it is a professional degree. And so everything that you will learn here will apply to, you know, your career, no matter what sector of social work you decide to go into afterwards. And so, yeah, just like being a sponge, come in open-minded and be ready to learn, I think. Because I think at times I probably walked in last year, especially, be closed off. And pretty much like, okay, I'm here to get my master's and I'm here to go get my, you know, my license one day. And then I don't want to think about school ever again. But there's a lot of good that comes from being here. And my biggest piece of advice would really just to come in humbly and be willing to learn.
Yeah,
So
that's great advice. Okay, well, after talking with you and just hearing about your experience, thank you so much for sharing.
Of course.
I would love to know, and I'm sure we'll stay in contact and actually know in real life, but where do you see your social work profession taking you ultimately?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. Well, I know where geographically it's taking me. I'll be in Jacksonville, Florida after this, as you know.
Getting married.
I'll be getting married and I'll be moving to Jacksonville, Florida. I'm so excited, which has been a whole other set of like things to learn of the way licensing works in different states and all of that jazz. It's a lot to learn and find your connections, people, because connections are the way that you'll know how this stuff works. But yeah, so geographically, I know that I'll be in Florida, which is exciting, new and exciting, scary at times, but also exciting. And hopefully I've been looking into schools a little bit. I've been mainly looking at schools and then a couple hospitals as well to kind of see where I want to end up. But I think whatever also can get me, I do still want to get my clinical license. So I still want to get my LCSW and more so, I think whatever can get me my LCSW as well. So I'm leaning towards school. I don't know. My fiance apparently has some connections, so hopefully those work out. But yeah, so hopefully school, and then I've always thought like later down the line, depending on what family life looks like, you know, I think that's one thing that's really cool about social work is the flexibility of it.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, like if I had kids one day, I've thought about like, you know, maybe I'll go into private practice for a little while to have more flexibility or go into a hospital or whatever that looks like. And so, yeah. But right now I'm definitely looking at school-based connections and a few hospital connections as well.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Well,
super exciting.
Whoever takes her will be just absolutely blessed to get in as a worker. Well, thanks so much for taking time to share with me. I know your schedule's busy, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, listener, for listening. I hope this gave you some good insight into school-based social work. And sick and bears.
Sick and bears.
Haley's experience shows us how school-based social work helps students thrive academically and emotionally. Join us next time as we continue highlighting the many dimensions of social work practice.